Hi everybody, this is the final type of passage analysis, okay? It's called the two-passage analysis. Now, two-passage analysis is kind of a combination actually of what we did already. Because a passage is either expository or narrative, for the purposes of the SAT anyway, okay? But sometimes in the SAT, the College Board gives us two separate passages. And basically, you're doing the same thing, right? For each passage that you read, you're still doing your rack or your dub method, okay? But you do have to add one further step to it, okay? So today we're going to look at one of these two passage sections, and we're going to do the rack method on it. And afterwards, we will use what I say is the key thing you need to think about as you do the two passage sections. All right, let's get into it. So remember, first passage, read the first one either using rack or the WWW method. Okay, expository, narrative. Then, funnily enough, you do the same thing for the second passage, rack or WWW method. Finally, similarities and differences. Done. Perfect. So from that first practice test, this is the two passage section, okay? Make sure you've got that open in front of you, and let's go ahead and rack it. R, recognize the topic. So we have to start with a preface, right? The preface right here is about space mining and taming the final frontier. Of course, most of you should know that the final frontier is referring to space. So probably this passage's topic is about space, maybe even space mining. Okay, let's confirm the first paragraphs of passage 1. Go ahead and read that to yourself and check, is it talking about space? Yeah, it's even talking about the mining in space, right? So space mining seems to be the topic. We've introduced it with some interesting details that make us think and reflect upon the topic. So we're racking it, remember? We're racking it. We did the R. We got to do the A and the C. Okay, just as a reminder, the A is annotate the important ideas. Which sentences convey broad, unusual, surprising, strong, or incomplete ideas? These are the sentences that make you think, right? Then, as an extra clue, are there any signal words that show contrasts, comparisons, lists, or answers to questions? These are usually important ideas as well. But if there's more than one important idea, then how do you know what the main idea is? You have to use C, confirm the main ideas. First step, predict what you expect to read next. Now, a lot of you are thinking, how do I do that again? What am I predicting as I read? Well, when I had a broad, unusual, surprising, strong, or incomplete idea, it would have made me think. For example, if I suddenly said to you guys, I'm reading a passage and it says, and the sky was purple that day. I think most of us would kind of raise an eyebrow and say, why is the sky purple? That's kind of weird. So you would predict that it would go on to explain why the sky is purple, right? On the other hand, if it said the sky is blue, you wouldn't think twice, right? So that's the kind of thing that's an important idea. So then you make that prediction. Because as you make that prediction and you go on to read, if you see that it does explain the sky's purple, it's a big clue that that may be the main idea, okay? Okay, let's keep going. So once you've done that, the last step you want to do within a paragraph is just see which of the important ideas that you underlined really connects the paragraph together, okay? And that'll be the main idea of that paragraph. Remember, very important, specific details. Specific details. If I'm talking about the exact size of the nut or the screw, right, on the on the ship, it's probably not the main point, right? Maybe it's that's a detail that supports how much precision is going into the ship, right? That could be the main idea. So specific details, facts, examples, quotes, these are things we use to support the main ideas, okay? I really want you guys to think that, okay? Think about it a lot, because if it's that specific, it's evidence. And evidence is never the main idea. Evidence is the evidence, funnily enough, for what we're trying to say. All right, enough of me talking. Let's go ahead into this first passage here. Let's continue. Let's continue to read passage 1. We already read the first two paragraphs, which were the introduction. Now go ahead and read this one, and remember, find the important idea. Okay, I underlined these two parts here. The first sentence is the broad sentence, right? It's the discussion of the two private asteroid mining firms. Because as I go into the details, what do you know? There are two specific private asteroid mining firms. I underlined another also, since it's showing me a list. So there was the first one, there's the second one. So what's the main idea? That there are, the private asteroid mining industry is picking up, and here's two examples of that. Okay, so let's keep going. Read that for yourself. Remember to pause if you need to. Now, I underlined these sentences. I had a big but here. Buts, yets, howevers, they're pretty important signals, right? So I'm talking here about how the gold rush pioneers, just like those pioneers, the space miners are going to enrich everybody, not just themselves. That's a contrast to the previous point, right? About how they're going to make a lot of money for themselves. But the key thing that I want to emphasize here is, that's not the main point. I told you this, but then I said, but that's not the main point. If I said, hey, I already ate dinner, but I could still eat, my main point isn't that I ate dinner. My main point is I could still eat. Hey, give me a slice of pizza, right? So the but signals the important point. Then they also showed me, oh, there's an additional point about the space miners that I'm making here, right? Which is that we can use those resources to also help off-planet. So heck, if I'm gonna pick a sentence, it's gonna be this one, because I'm showing how the space miners not only enrich themselves, but they're gonna enrich others, not only on Earth, but on off-planet economies as well. Okay, what are you gonna underline in this one? This one seems a little more straightforward. Really, there's only one broad, and I'd even say it's a strong idea that water mined from other worlds could become the most desired commodity. It's strong, it's surprising, because when we think about water, it's a very common resource. It's free, almost free anyway. Not in California, but most places on Earth, water is very cheap. It's considered not a valuable thing. But here we have in the passage the author saying that water could become the most desired commodity, more than gold, more than platinum, right? So it makes you think a little bit. You read the details, and lo and behold, yep, all the details about how water is so important. Otherwise, we die. It's kind of important. So that clearly is the main idea of these two sections here. And you'll notice that I did group these two together. It's not a hard and fast rule. If you're seeing that the second paragraph is more details or more details for the previous point, that's okay. You can bucket them together. Okay, so group them together. Finally, in the last paragraph, we do see that there's only really one point being made here, which is that companies are really going to use the soil on the planets too. So there are further resources that could be used on the asteroids. Companies are doing this, others want to do that, but basically it's all about how the companies want to use the lunar soil. Done. Let's move on to passage 2. We're recognizing the topic, and right here, yep, space, minerals and mining, right? So on topic, easy. Keep reading. Blah, 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 blah. I did see some big buts here, right? I saw some big buts here. I'm underlining those things. But before the miners start firing up their rockets, we should pause for thought, right? If you're like me, you're probably going to pause for thought there yourself and say, I'm going to find out why we should pause for thought. And here's the first glance of why we should pause. But there's a contrast as well. Okay, so the first glance, of course, was that maybe there's no environmental concerns because there's no environment up there. But we should be careful. So again, this paragraph didn't really go into a lot of detail yet, but it did tell me that it's something we need to be cautious about, right? Why cautious? Something related to the environment. I'm actually going to move my kind of prediction thinking into the next paragraph, right? The next few paragraphs should be talking about
why we need to pause for thought in greater detail, okay?
But in this particular one, yeah, this main idea is introducing the idea that we need to pause. Think. Part of this is about principles, okay? Read this for yourself. It's so short that you probably don't even need to pause. Personally, I look at this and say to myself, part of the reason we need to think is about principles. Some say this. Others say that.
Now that's a classic pattern. Some people think, others say that, still others say. So that's a pattern that's telling me we're getting a list of ideas. And remember, a list are details. Lists are details. So those are supporting the part about principles. Part of the reason we need to be cautious is because of principles. Which principles? These ones right here.
Some will argue that we shouldn't be despoiling space. Others say that we need to make a sustainable life on Earth. So those are the principles that make us think, okay? But the main point that connects those two is that the reason for pause is about principles. Next paragraph. Blah, 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 blah. Really short, these ones, aren't they? History suggests that it'd be hard to change the public's mind. And then I underlined after all as well, because that's a restatement of an important idea, right? It's kind of explaining further why it's hard to persuade people. So not a lot in this paragraph. It's just showing us it's going to be hard to change the public's mind so that they don't go about spoiling space nature for space environmentalists. Okay, next paragraph. There's also, big point for me, right? Also is
another point. Furthermore, moreover, in addition, also, we're adding an extra point. Because I'm adding on at the beginning of the paragraph, I'm thinking to myself, this is a main idea, because I'm adding on from the previous paragraph to a new paragraph. It's a new point for the paragraph. So this point right here is a main idea for sure.
There's also the off-world economy to consider. In what way should we consider the off-world economy? I don't know, read the paragraph, right? What should you do? It says it right here. I'm not even going to tell you because it's not that important. It is important, but it's not super duper important. As long as you know when the passage asks me, or when the questions in the SAT ask me to think about this, I'm just going to come back here and look at these sentences carefully. Almost there. Last paragraph, I think. Read it for yourself. Annotate the important ideas. Let's compare your annotation with mine. Space miners, like their earthly counterparts, are reluctant to engage in these questions, but miners have much to gain from an agreement in space. Okay, so couple of points here. These don't really seem that connected, so I'm actually going to underline or highlight both these things and say, this paragraph has a couple of points that it wants to make. That miners don't really want to think about these concerns, but they should. They should, because they will also gain from it. So let's review both passages by looking at what we underlined for all of them. Passage 1. There's a forum showing that lots of private firms are thinking about mining. These miners are going to enrich themselves, but also enrich others. And water is going to be desired, as well as lunar soil. Okay, seems pretty straightforward now, right?
You may have felt a little bit of confusion, right, as you read the passage for yourself the first time. I do that a lot too. If I just read it and I'm not thinking, like, what did I just read? I know it's about space mining, but how do I structure it in my mind so that I can remember it? How do I structure it so that I can teach it and explain it? Well, when I do this, it becomes super easy, and you can do that too. So, boom, I can remember it. I don't have to look at it. I can remember every detail about that passage because I have the skeleton in there, okay? Passage 2. The motivation for space travel is shifting to economics. Right? Again, introducing the topic of mining. But the miners
need to think. They need to think for a second. Wait a second. It's not all roses. Because of the principles. These principles. It's going to be hard to change their minds, though, for this reason. We should also consider off-world economies. And miners don't really want to think about these issues, but They should. That's it. Next step.
And this is unique. This is unique to the 2-passage section, okay? And it's not that hard. Now that you have the main ideas for passage 1 and passage 2, ask yourself, what are the similarities? What are the differences?
So look over here and we can see the similarities are, they're both about space mining. Space mining won't just benefit miners. It'll benefit off-world economies, right? Both passages describe how space resources can benefit. Describe how space resources can be valuable for other economies other than Earth. The differences. Passage 1 did describe water. Passage 2 did not. Passage 2 clearly discussed some criticisms of space mining. And at this point, there's no perfect answer for similarities and differences. Okay, I'm wrong. There is a perfect answer, but I'm sure I don't have the perfect answer here. As long as you have the key points and you're thinking about it,
that'll really give you the trigger you need if the question makes you, kind of come back to it. Because it's very rare that the answer you have in your mind is exactly the same as the College Board answer. Okay.
So to review, remember, it's not that different from the regular 1-passage sections. Use the rack method. Use the dub method to engage, to help you remember what you're reading, to help you understand what you're reading. Then, as a final step, just compare the differences and similarities between the 2 passages, and you will be done. All right, great job, everybody. Let's continue on with another lesson.